I give you all and have nothing. Just hear my name. Because in the midnight hour, keep on holding on. Keep on holding on. In the midnight hour, holding on. With a rebel, keep on holding on. Good morning, everyone. This is Katie Birch. I'm your cooperative education teacher. We're in DC 030, creating opportunities through co-op, and we are on topic 3, your best foot forward. We have talked about things you're good at. We've done personality surveys. We have worked on your resume and your cover letter, and today is job interview day. We're going to talk about some skills and strategies and things you can learn before going into a job interview. Some of you already have jobs, and some of you are going into co-op placement that will require an interview. And at some point in your life, whether now or in 5 years or 10 years, you're going to have to face an interview. So let's talk about some skills of how to be successful in an interview. Okay, just like I do at the beginning of every class, I'm going to remind you that in cooperative education, communication is key. It's really important that we keep that two-way communication open, and you can contact me in 3 ways. The fastest is obviously my cell phone. So you can text me or call me on 738-3915, area code 807. The second fastest way to reach me is through email, and then you will email me at kburch@nnec.on.ca. There's also my NNEC Schools email, and you can even message me through Google Classroom. So really important. If you're falling behind, reach out. I'll help you get caught back up. All right, let's see what we're doing today. Oops. Hang on a second. My screen was not happy with me. Okay, all the classwork is hosted in Google Classroom. So you just go to www.classroom.google.com and you log in with your credentials. And your credentials that you will need are your first name, last name, month of your birth date, day of your birth date at nnecschools.org. If you're not sure what to do, go back to that communication. It's really important that you keep that stream of communication up to date. All right, what are we covering today? We are doing your best foot forward. So how to prepare for the interview, first impressions and why that's so important, how to dress and prepare physically, mentally, emotionally for an interview. And then we're going to talk about interview basics and sort of go through some of the more challenging questions you might face in an interview, just because sometimes there's some pretty typical questions that you get asked during an interview, and I'm just going to show you how to answer them effectively without making a mistake. And practice makes perfect. So we're going to practice answering some interview questions today too. So your resume and cover letter should be done. Now it's time to meet your supervisor or apply for a job and go for an interview. So meeting in person means more ways that you can impress that person. Okay, a few more details to nail down before you shake hands. We're talking body language today. Does your body language say, hire me? Are you dressed appropriately for the job? Okay, I have a picture here. I want you to think about that as you're looking at this picture. During the interview, do you sound like, look like, feel like somebody that the employer would like to have around every single day? So there's a picture here of Phil and Louisa, and they're on their way to a big interview, okay? This guy here, Phil, he's trying to get a co-op placement or apply for a job as a carpenter, okay? And Louisa here, She is, where's she going? She's applying for a job with the fire department. So take a look at the picture. Phil wants to be a cabinet maker. Louisa wants to work in a fire department. This is how they come dressed for their interview. Would you hire Phil as a carpenter? Would you hire Louisa? Why or why not? Okay, we're going to take a look at these pictures. So what are some mistakes do you think that Phil has made with his, we're going to start with Phil. What are some mistakes that you think Phil has made with what he's chosen to show for his interview? So I would say it's not what he's wearing that's as important, it's how he's wearing it. Okay, so an important step with an interview is make sure you are dressed tidy. Okay, doesn't mean your clothes have to be beautiful and perfect, but they need to be tucked in. I would avoid wearing a hat and also avoid wearing a hoodie. You could wear the hoodie, but make sure your hood is down. You can also see that he's got sunglasses. Okay, when you go for an interview, people need to see your face. And he is applying for a carpentry job. So having a shirt untucked, having pants that are too long, that's not showing the employer that you're dressed safely for that work environment. Safety first when it comes to clothing. So that's Phil. Now let's take a look at Louisa. So Louisa's applying for a job in a fire department. Okay, so how she's wearing her clothes. Would you want your firefighter to be wearing clothes that had lots of exposed skin? So we're going to come back to safety. Okay, her safety, her clothing isn't safe for working with fire. Okay, something also to consider is to make sure that tattoos, it's not that you problem that you have tattoos, but tattoos should be covered, especially in a position like firefighting. There's a specific uniform that you need to wear for firefighting. So, making sure that those things are covered to represent the organization appropriately. Many people have tattoos now in their lives. Sometimes they have them from when they were children. It's always best to sort of keep them discreet. It's not bad that you have them. It's just you need to maintain professionalism. Okay. So a lot of her clothing just doesn't look professional. And also it's a safety hazard. Jewelry, we're going to talk about that later, can be a safety hazard. If you're working with equipment that you're carrying around, it can be dangerous to be having all these things hanging, and remove your piercings. It's fine to have piercings. What you do in your personal life is one thing, but maintaining an air of professionalism is also very important. Okay, so how could we fix Phil's outfit here? Well, all he would have to do is he would have to tuck in his shirt, take off his hat, pull his pants up, or hem pants, okay, and take off some sunglasses. And just make sure he's showered and ready to go, like nice, clean cut, well groomed. So he doesn't have to change who he is. He just needs to modify his outfit so it's showing professionalism, but also safety in the workplace. Same as Louisa. All Louisa would need to do is take out her earrings. You can leave some in. Remove objects that are hanging that may cause danger. Put on a hoodie, long sleeve shirt, and more appropriate pants, skirt. I mean, really, it's probably not safe to be wearing a skirt in as the fire department. So the key here is to dress for the job you want. Okay, so if you wanted to be a firefighter, you don't need to show up in a firefighter uniform, but you need to dress appropriately for that job, wearing appropriate clothes that would be good for that position. Okay, so we talked about mistakes and how to fix them. I'm not saying you have to change who you are, but you do need to look professional in an interview. All right, let's keep moving along. Next slide. Okay, so first impressions do count. All right. The first thing people notice about you is how you look. You don't have to be a supermodel to impress the interviewer. Personal hygiene, grooming, dressing appropriately for the interview matter the most. 55% of people get the first impression of you by how you look, how you dress, your facial expression, and your body language. 38% of the impression is formed by your tone of voice, and 7% by what you actually say. So stepping and standing in front of an employer is more important than the words you speak when you talk. Did you know that a series of experiments by Princeton psychologists showed that all it takes is 1/10 of a second to form an impression of a stranger? That's crazy. 1/10 of a second. That's less than that. All right. So always make sure that you shower or bathe before an interview. Make sure your clothes are clean and that you use antiperspirant deodorant. Avoid perfume. Many employers now no longer support the use of fragrances in the workplace. Okay. You never know who might be sensitive to what you're wearing. Your hair should be clean and styled. Beards and mustaches should be trimmed up, nicely kept. If you wear nail polish, leave the unusual colors at home unless you're interviewing for a fashion or a salon where those types of colors would be accepted. Makeup and jewelry for men and women, totally fine, but should be subtle. Just depending on what job you're applying for, a watch or a thin neck chain that fits under your shirt is totally acceptable. At some companies, men can wear earrings. Sometimes they can't. It's always good to check before you go. In most cases, though, you should try and cover up any tattoos before you meet your employer. And it's also a good idea to find out what the company does and does not accept in terms of piercings. So always do your research, just like with your cover letter and your resume. It's really important to do research about the company. If you're applying for a job with the provincial police or for the band police or for any specific organization that has a uniform, it's really important to read about the appearance standards for these major employers in Ontario or wherever you're working in Northern Ontario. Okay, so I will show you this. I sort of talked a little bit about police, and this is dress code policies. Many employers have dress code policies. So go and look it up if you can find it. Give them a call, find out what their dress code policies are. There's no problem calling an employer to find out what information. Very often they'll say what their dress code is, even in teaching. Like, I can't wear jeans until Fridays if I'm teaching in the classroom. Okay. If you have clothing or grooming that's dictated by religion, an employer is not allowed to tell you can't dress that way. But there are some certain standards that you can see here where employees are expected to dress in what style. Is it casual? Is it business casual? Is it smart casual? Okay, they always need to be clean. This is just sort of what we talked about, not too revealing, those kinds of things. And then there's usually a policy around what a violation if you're violating the dress code. So just do your research. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so something to note here too, considerations for employers, and it's important for an employee to know this too. Employers very often implement a dress code that has some flexibility built into it, okay? You really don't want to discriminate people based on their appearance, especially if it's with regards to religion or belief systems, okay? Employers who are operating in a safety-sensitive work environment should try to accommodate employees who experience discrimination as a result of dress code. So these are all conversations to have with your employer when you get hired, but just get yourself hired. Okay, let's talk job interview. You're definitely looking like the one to hire because you've groomed yourself, you're dressed appropriately for the job. Now it's time to talk about your experience and answer some questions. So you've scheduled an interview. You want to show a positive impression by knowing these 10 interview basics. Okay, we're going to go through them one at a time. The first thing is the interviewers, sometimes there's many of them, will introduce themselves, usually with a handshake. And there's some other things to consider of how to introduce yourself in a interview. So we're going to watch this video, and then it's actually going to watch a series of videos in class today. Then we're going to go through some other of the 10 interview basics, and then I've got a task for you to complete at the end. So let's watch and see what this guy says about introducing yourself in an interview.
Once you're sat down in the interview chair, the interviewer is going to say something like, "Welcome to the interview. Can you start off by introducing yourself?" Or they might say, "Tell me about yourself." Now, whenever you introduce yourself during an interview, it's really important that you include the following 4 things. Please make sure you take notes. Number 1, talk about the skills and qualities you have that are a match for the role you are applying for. Number 2, talk about any experience or qualifications you possess that are relevant to the position. Number 3, talk about any significant achievements you have gained in work life or personal life so far. And then finally, number 4, talk about the type of person you are and what you are going to do in the role if they hire you. So you should include those 4 things when introducing yourself during a job interview. And right now, I am going to give you a brilliant job interview introduction script that you can use right at the start of your interview. So when the interviewer says to you, "Introduce yourself," here's a brilliant script that you can use. Here we go. "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be interviewed for this position today. Now, having studied the job description, I am confident I have the skills, the qualities, and the qualifications needed to excel in the role. I am a fast learner. I possess excellent problem-solving capabilities, and I can manage a significant workload. I have an impressive track record of achievement. For example, in my previous role, I was praised by my supervisor for helping the company find ways to increase sales by improving customer service standards. Now, the type of person I am means I will always act as a positive role model for the company, and I will make sure I take responsibility for my ongoing professional development. Now, if you hire me in this position, I believe you will quickly see a positive return on your investment." That is a brilliant example of a job interview introduction that you can use right at the start of your interview. So you now know exactly what to say.
Okay, so that's how you introduce yourself.
In the interview chair, the interviewer is going to say something.
Let me move to the next slide here. Okay, how to introduce yourself. Now we're going to talk number 2, small talk. What is small talk? Don't be surprised if the first couple of questions are about the weather or whether you'd like a glass of water. Small talk will help you settle your nerves and help you sort of get to know the employer as well. So let's talk. What things should you talk about for small talk in an interview? And instead of listening to me, I thought it'd be fun for you to listen to some other people talk about it.
Say something about your day or the trip to get to their office or how excited you are to be there. Here are a few ideas. Good, it's been a good day so far. I had a productive morning, so yeah, everything's good. Another one. Oh, fine, thanks. The traffic was smooth getting here, and it was easy to find your office, so far, so good. Or another one. I'm good, thanks. I've been looking forward to this interview for a while, so I'm happy to finally be here. Keep it positive. You don't want the interviewer to remember you as the person who complained all the time. If you have the habit of complaining about train strikes, the bad weather, or how tired you are, please go watch the lesson, How to Answer, How Are You? It seems like a basic question, but I see students who mess this up all the time. Think of it as your first interview question and prepare it.
So that's a key point, is preparing for the interview. Even for the littlest things like small talk, Because when you're nervous, if you prepare and practice, it becomes part of your memory and you don't have to stress about what to say because you've already prepared what to say. All right, next one. So we talked about introductions, we talked about small talk. Now we're talking about general interview questions. The real interview starts here. You might be asked what you know about the company or how you heard about the placement. This is where you can really show off your research or the connections that you have with the people in the organization. Maybe your aunt works for the band office and you're applying for a job at the band office. So we're going to listen to this guy talk about general types of interview questions and how to answer them.
Brief you on answering a few of the most frequently questions in an interview. Number 1, tell me about yourself. This question is asked to gauge your confidence and communication skills. Here you can speak about education, experience, and hobbies. Make sure to have a concise answer and answer with enthusiasm. 2, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Through this answer, the interviewer wishes to see how positive you think about yourself and if you can identify your weaknesses. Speaking about your strengths, there's no right or wrong. It can be about your flexibility, your attention to detail, and so on. However, speaking about your weaknesses, you don't have to be hard on yourself. You can reply with an answer like, your attention to detail trait can sometimes be a disadvantage, and you tend to spend more time. This way, your weakness still has a positive side. 3, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? This question can be a little tricky. Through this question, the interviewer is analyzing your commitment to the company. An ideal answer to this would be to tell how you wish to be a significantly higher position in the future and learn new things. 4, why should we hire you? When answering this question, do not speak about how good your academics are. Instead, speak about how eager you are to learn. And hence, the opportunity would be a good one to show your zeal. You can also touch upon a few qualities that they have that will be highly beneficial for this job. You can also list a few positive impacts you have made in the previous organization and how you can bring those here. 5, finally, the interviewer might conclude by asking you if you have any questions for them. Always make sure to ask good and relevant questions. This displays the seriousness you have towards the job. Ask questions regarding opportunities for your professional development in the particular job role. It is important to know that this is for your personal growth. Based on this, you can decide if that particular job is a good choice for your career or not. These were a few of the commonly asked questions in an interview.
Awesome. Okay, so that was number 3, general questions. Next, we're going to go to skills and experience. So now it's time to highlight your skills that relate to the job. So think about when we did the activity topic 1, am I right for this? Expand on your story that you told about that skill and outline an event that showed how you use that skill. And what that does is it takes us to your first assignment for this, and it's called Skills They Want. You should have filled this in previously, and if you haven't, I posted it here again for you in Google Classroom. So you're going to jump over to Google Classroom and you're going to fill out this assignment, and I'll go in as a student. So you can see we're looking for topic 3, skills they want, and we're going to click view assignment. Okay, got it. And we're going to open up that assignment. Should already be titled for you. Okay, so skills they want. So for example, maybe you're applying for, I think we worked on a laborer. So skills they want someone who can lift 30 plus pounds, I think was on our job. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to say, in my role at Donnelly's Minnetonka Lodge, I was responsible for filling boats with gas and lifting heavy equipment for cabin cleanup on a regular basis. And then what you would do is give an example. So in this situation, I always made sure I used the appropriate safety equipment. And if there was a story, you can talk about maybe an incident that happened where you were wearing your safety equipment and it saved you from getting into a major accident. Okay. It is a good idea to do this. Pick 3 skills they're looking for that the employer wants, and then think of 2 examples or stories for each of those skills. Okay, so you'll need to go back to that job description that we did earlier in a few days ago. So this is your task. So what I would do at this point is I would pause the video. I'm not going to pause it now, but pause the video and work on the skills they want activity, and then go ahead and turn it in when you're finished. All right, so you're going to work on that and practice answering skills they want, because they're going to ask you, what skills do you have for this job that make you a great employee for us? Okay, now we're going to talk about the 2 most difficult questions to answer in an interview, and it happens in almost every interview. What is your strength? What is your weakness? And I think probably the weaknesses are the hardest ones to answer. I just realized. So we're going to start with strengths, finish with weaknesses. And this gentleman has some really good ideas of how to highlight your strengths and do it successfully in an interview. And then we're going to watch how to highlight your weaknesses. So let's start with strengths. So just before we start, well, we'll talk about this after, actually. Let's watch the video first.
Tip number 1 when responding to the interview question, what are your strengths, is to make sure you give 3 brilliant strengths. And you should also avoid using strengths such as I'm hardworking, I'm enthusiastic, and I'm professional. You should avoid those, because all the other candidates will be giving them in their response to the question. It's important that you give strengths that demonstrate you are able to add value to their organization. Tip number 2 when responding to the question, what are your strengths, is to make sure you give unique strengths that make the interviewer sit up and listen. And in a second, I'm going to give you 10 brilliant strengths that you can choose from that are guaranteed to get the attention of the interviewer. Tip number 3, when answering the question, what are your strengths, is to make sure you back up your claims with evidence. Now, anybody can say, I am good at multitasking, that's one of my strengths. But backing it up with evidence is another thing altogether. So whenever you give a strength during a job interview, make sure you tell them an example of where you have demonstrated that strength in a previous job role. So let me now give you 10 brilliant strengths that you can use in a job interview. You can then choose which 3 you are going to use during your response to the question, what are your strengths? Strength number 1 is to say that you are disciplined and focused. Those are tip number 1 when response-worthy, a really good. If you are loyal, resourceful, a formal working job description, and that you are available to help out the organization at short notice whenever required. So if you say in response to the question, what are your strengths, that you are flexible and versatile, that's going to resonate positively with the interviewer. So strength number 3 is one of my favorites, and that is being resourceful. If you say you are resourceful during a job interview, it means that you are an innovative problem solver and you always seek ways to overcome difficult challenges. Strength number 4 is to say that you are a loyal and trustworthy person. If you are loyal and trustworthy, it means that you will always act as a positive role model for their company, and that you can be relied upon to carry out your duties in line with organizational policies and procedures. So being loyal and trustworthy are really good strengths to use when answering the question, what are your strengths? Strength number 5 is to say that you are a collaborative worker. If you say that you are a collaborative worker, it means that you understand the importance of effective teamwork and that you are required to support your co-workers when carrying out difficult team tasks. Strength number 6 is to say that you are commercially aware. This is a brilliant one. If you tell the interviewer you are somebody that is commercially aware, it means that you understand that for their business to achieve its commercial and financial goals, you need to carry out your duties in line with the job description, on time, and to the necessary standard. So saying that you are commercially aware is a brilliant strength to give during your job interview. Strength number 7 is to say that you are detail orientated and attentive. So if you say these strengths during your interview, it means that you are the type of person who will always focus on the details and you will carry out your duties to a very high standard. Strength number 8 is to say that you are creative and innovative. And this means that you are the type of person who will help the business find ways to increase sales and to also improve customer service. And it also means that you will think outside of the box when overcoming difficult challenges. So to say that you are creative and innovative is a brilliant strength to use when responding to the question, what are your strengths? Strength number 9 is to say that you are a fast learner and that you will always seek to improve in the role. These are brilliant strengths to use in a job interview. So if you are a fast learner, it means that you are going to learn the role quickly. It will mean that you will require little supervision or monitoring moving forward. And to say that you will always seek to learn and improve means that you are going to take ownership of your own professional development. So they are brilliant strengths to use in a job interview. The fact that you are a fast learner and you will always seek to learn and improve. Now, in a second, I am going to give you an example.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next one. So we talked strengths. Now let's talk weaknesses. This is a tough one. Don't choose a skill that's central to your job. I made a huge mistake when I had my very first teaching interview and they asked me what my weakness was. And I said it was classroom management. That is the worst answer for a teacher because if you can't manage students, you can't do the job. So obviously I didn't get that job, but I learned that as much as it wasn't an area of strength for me at the moment, it's not something I wanted to say in an interview. So the same gentleman talks about 10 things that you can use as your weaknesses and jot down ones that are relevant to you. Grab a notepad, write down the weaknesses that you think would be appropriate for you to highlight as part of your interview.
So, why is the interviewer asking you the question, what's your biggest weakness? Well, they are asking you the question for 3 reasons. The first reason is they want to see that you are self-aware. You understand your weaknesses, because if you understand them, then you can take steps to improve. The second reason why they ask you the question, what's your biggest weakness, is because they want to assess whether or not you are an honest person. Now, those people who say, I don't have any weaknesses, are not being honest. We all have weaknesses. So it's really important that you do give one, but that you give one that is not a match for the job description. And finally, they want to hear that you have a plan in place for improving upon your weakness. So there's 3 reasons why the interviewer will ask you the question, what's your biggest weakness? Now, there are 3 weaknesses you should avoid when responding to the question, what's your biggest weakness? The first one is you should never say, my weakness is that I'm not very good at working with people. Because in all job roles, you have to collaborate with other people and you will also have to deal with customers or clients. So never say, my biggest weakness is I am not very good at working with people. The second weakness to avoid is that you should never say, my weakness is I'm not very good at timekeeping. Now, in any job, you have to be a good timekeeper. You have to turn up to work on time, so you have to be punctual. And you also have to be good at completing tasks and projects on time as required by the employer. And the third weakness that you should always avoid is to never say, my weakness is I'm not very good at managing multiple tasks or projects. Because again, in any job role, you have to be able to manage multiple tasks and take on lots of different roles and responsibilities. So make sure when you answer the question, what's your biggest weakness, you avoid those 3 weaknesses at all costs. Now, before I come on to those 11 great weaknesses to give during a job interview, here's 3 really important tips for structuring your answer. Tip number 1, make sure you do give an honest weakness. That's very, very important because the interviewer will respect you if you are honest about your weaknesses. Tip number 2, never say, I don't have any weaknesses because I'm a perfectionist. Now, a lot of people say that during their job interviews when responding to the question, what's your biggest weakness? But that is a guaranteed way to fail the entire interview. So don't say, I'm a perfectionist, I don't have any weaknesses. And tip number 3, this is really important. At the end of your response, you should tell the interviewer that you are taking steps to improve upon your weakness. So let's now jump into those 11 great weaknesses you can use during your job interview, and you can choose one of them which is most applicable to you. So in front of me, I have 11 great weaknesses that you can use in a job interview. Now, all of these weaknesses are fine to use. So I will give you the weakness and I will then give you an example answer. So when you find the one that's most applicable to you, make sure you pause the video and take a note of the response that I give. So weakness number 1 is to say, my biggest weakness is the fact that I focus too much on detail when carrying out projects or tasks. So I would answer the question in this way. I am a detail-orientated person, but when a project has a tight deadline, this is not always helpful. I am trying to be more mindful in situations like these, and I am learning to focus more on the end goal of the project or task that I am responsible for. So saying that your weakness is the fact that you focus too much on detail during projects or tasks is a really good one to give. Weakness number 2 is to say that you find it difficult to ask other people for help when needed. That's a really good weakness to consider giving. So I would say, I take great pride in my work. And when I encounter problems, I always try to figure things out for myself. However, I do understand it would be more beneficial to seek advice from other, more experienced people in my team, and I am taking steps to improve in this area. So that's another really good weakness, to say that you find it difficult to ask other people for help or guidance when it is needed. Weakness number 3 is to say that your biggest weakness is the fact that you struggle to let go of projects. That's another really good one. So I would say, I tend to get so engrossed in projects when I am working on them, and I don't want to let them go. However, I do understand this is not always helpful to my employer's goals, and I am learning to finish a project and then move straight on to the next one. Weakness number 4 is to say that you are not very good at giving people feedback. That's another really good one. So I would say, if someone asks me for feedback, I would rather avoid it, as I don't want to hurt their feelings. However, I do appreciate feedback is an important part of self-development, and I have been trying to improve in this area by forcing myself to give people feedback when it is requested. So to say that you are not very good at giving people feedback is another great weakness to consider giving during your job interview. Weakness number 5 on our list of 11 great weaknesses to give in a job interview is to say you find it really hard saying no to people. Again, this is one of my favorite weaknesses. So I would say this has been a problem of mine because I always say yes to everything, even if I don't have the capacity to do so. Now, in the past, I have sometimes become overwhelmed by taking on too many responsibilities. Now, before I say yes to things, I now take my time to assess my own workload to make sure I do have the capacity to commit to the extra work responsibilities. So saying that you find it hard to say no to people, you always say yes, and you sometimes become overwhelmed is another great weakness to consider giving during your job interview. Weakness number 6 is to say that you lack experience in a certain area. So I would say, I currently lack experience in taking the lead on projects, but this is something I am keen to improve on. Now, if I am to reach my full potential, this is an area I need to gain experience in, and I am keen to improve in this particular area. So to say that you lack experience in a certain area is a really safe weakness to give during a job interview. Weakness number 7 is to say that you are sometimes too sensitive. This is a really good weakness to consider giving. So I would say, I am sometimes too sensitive, and in the past I would take criticism personally. However, I do understand that for me to continually improve professionally, I need to view other people's comments as constructive and productive. So I am learning to be more mindful in situations such as these, when people are simply trying to help me improve and develop. So that's a really good weakness to consider giving in your job interview. Weakness number 8 is to say that you can sometimes be too judgmental of other people. So that's a really good, honest weakness to give. So I would say, in my last role, I would automatically judge people if they were either late to finishing a project or if their standard of work was not up to scratch. However, I have been trying to improve in this area, and I no longer jump to conclusions relating to other people's performance. Instead, I try to offer my help or support so they can improve, which ultimately serves to help the team move forward. So that's another really good weakness to give when responding to the question, what's your biggest weakness? Weakness number 9, and this is a really good one, is to say that you don't yet have any leadership experience. And this is a really good weakness to give if you are a fresher or a first-time job applicant. So I would be saying, I currently have no leadership experience, but this is something I really want to improve on. If you asked me now to take the lead on something, I wouldn't feel confident in doing so. However, to improve in this area, I would seek to observe how managers and team leaders tackle projects and tasks so I can then learn how to do it myself when the opportunity presents itself. So that's a really strong weakness to give in a job interview. Weakness number 10 is to say that you get stressed if a project or task ends up running over the deadline. So I would say my weakness is the fact that I sometimes get stressed out if I think a project is going to run over its deadline. This is simply because I take pride in my work and I genuinely don't want to let my employer down. However, I am learning to remain calm in difficult situations such as these and to focus on what I can do to help get the project finished on time and to the necessary standard. So that's another really good, strong weakness to give when answering the question, what's your biggest weakness? Weakness number 11 is to say that you are not very good at presenting to large groups of people. This is a really safe weakness to give when answering the question, what's your biggest weakness? So I would be saying something like, my weakness is my fear of public speaking. I would genuinely love to have the confidence to stand up in front of a group of people and give a talk. However, I am trying to improve in this area, and I recently purchased a book from Amazon on how to improve confidence when public.
All right, so some really good suggestions for identifying your strengths and your weaknesses. Other things to consider for job interview is some interviewers will ask you very deep questions. Like what we said earlier was, what are your goals in the next 5 years? What are you passionate about? Don't panic at these questions. They're just wanting to identify your values and personality to see if you're a good fit. And like I said before, practice, practice, practice. Write it out, okay? We're going to have time to do that for your assignment today. Number 7 is the unconventional question. So sometimes an interview will ask you out of the ordinary questions, especially scenario-based questions like how would you deal with this? Especially if you're working in an education environment, like how would you deal with a classroom that's where kids are rolling around on the floor? You're asked about hypothetical situations or problems. They just want to see how you would solve a problem. So don't panic, take a deep breath, relax, and just answer it honestly, okay? Same with unconventional questions like what is your favorite author, color? So sort of think about those things before going into the interview as well. All right, number 8, we missed it, was turning the tables. And towards the end of the interview, you might be asked if you have any questions for the interviewer. So really, you should be looking back at the job description and coming up with some questions. Avoid asking about money. Wait until they offer you the job before you talk how much you're going to get paid. But definitely ask work-related questions. It doesn't hurt to sort of have those written down as well. All right, the review. Okay, after the interview, take some time to reflect and review on how you responded. How well did you do? What are some things you could improve? This part actually is super interesting because even if you don't get the job, it is 100% a great idea to call the employer and ask them how you could have improved for next time, because it's all a learning experience when you're going into an interview. And that is probably one of the best things I've ever done, is call the employer when I didn't get the job and say, hey, what did I do wrong? How can I make this better for next time? Sometimes that will even lead to you getting the job. Just saying. Okay, number 10, the follow-up. It's not over yet when the interview's over. Follow up by a phone call or an email to say you enjoyed the opportunity. You can also write them a letter to say thank you so much for their time. If you're interested, it does. Usually what I do is a phone call or an email because it doesn't need to be super formal. So that's why I didn't give it to you as an assignment for this today. Okay, so now we're almost done time here. So your tasks for today are you need to work on the preparing, your best foot forward, which we already talked about earlier in the class today. And then there's also an assignment in Google Classroom called preparing for the interview. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to work on some goals from what you learned today that you can apply to your co-op interview or a future interview. Okay, so before the interview, list 2 goals you can work on to improve a future interview based on what you learned today. Okay, so maybe get this out before you even start watching those videos. Okay, at the start of the interview, what should you remind yourself to do the most? What should you need to remind yourself during the interview? 2 goals each. At the end of the interview, list 2 good questions you could ask an employer. Okay, and then the second part of this assignment today is common interview questions. I would like you to choose 3 of these questions, and I would like you to practice your response based on what you learned in class today. So that's your task. You have 2 assignments. You have preparing for the interview and skills they want to work on today. And then reminder that you go and access your assignments in www.classroom.google.com. If you're having trouble logging in, let me know. My information is down here. I'll remind you again. You can email me on kburch@nnec.on.ca, or you can text me 807-738-3915. All right, I feel like we learned quite a bit today on how to be successful in an interview, and I hope you take that information that you learned and consolidate it in your last 2 assignments today. So, all right, tomorrow we are going into workplace safety, which is one of my favorite topics, and hopefully we can get you guys your WHMIS certification if you don't have it already as part of that activity. So today is Wednesday. Tomorrow is our last class for the week. So we should get to the end of topic 4 by the end of this week. Awesome. We're motoring through. So have a super day. Get your work done. And I'll be in touch if I haven't seen you online yet. So talk to you guys in class tomorrow.